So this is Wednesday evening seekers question and answer session. And we have one question which was sent to me. And it is, can I say something or give examples of the way Holy Mother was doing Karma Yoga? Now, first of all, we have to explain to those not familiar who is Holy Mother, what we mean by Holy Mother. We don't automatically understand what we mean by Holy Mother. So let me explain that, and then let me also explain about Karma Yoga. Well, Holy Mother for us refers to Sharda Devi, and Sharda Devi was the consort of the mystic Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna Paramahansa, born 1806, and he passes away in 1886, and he has Holy Mother as his consort. We say consort because they were married, but they never ever consummated their marriage, living in fact, or choosing to live like monk and nun together. So are there any examples of her doing Karma Yoga? What do we mean by Karma Yoga? Now, I'm going to ask you the question, so maybe somebody could tell me what you mean by Karma Yoga, because I think this is a well misunderstood subject. So I'm opening the forum. Anybody can answer the question.
It's selfless service.
Yes, you can say in a nutshell it is selfless service. Now there are skeptics, of course, who will tell us, mainly in the atheistic camp, there is no such thing as selfless service, that any action that we do has some kind of motive involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also discover this when, in fact, we have to, if we go through that Gospel of Ramakrishna, we will see that Ramakrishna is a critic of those people who feel that selfless service is social service. And social service has with it some kind of motive, normally speaking. Now, Swami Vivekananda, when he gives a talk on the secret of work, and Karma Yoga is one of the 4 yogas he describes through various subjects. One subject is secret of work. And he makes this comment, helping others physically by removing their physical needs is indeed great. But the help is greater according as the need is greater, and according as the help is far-reaching. If a person's wants can be removed for an hour, it is helping him indeed. If his wants can be removed for a year, that will be more helpful. But if his wants can be removed forever, it is surely the greatest help that can be given to him. And spiritual knowledge is the only thing that can destroy our miseries forever. So he ranks the order of helping people, and Ramakrishna would go further. To help somebody really is a form of egotism. It's equivalent to saying, I'm humble and proud of it. So to be helpful, it's a tricky thing about the language. So helping others is a good thing, but what is even more is seeing the spiritual aspect within a person. Not just a person, but an event, a scene. And in order to do this, we have to understand what is yoga. Yoga is anything that gives us a unity at the end of our exercise. Exercise meaning whatever type of yoga we pick up. What types of yoga have been described. Of course, some people talk about hatha yoga also. Well, Hatha Yoga is the physical side of that. And yoga itself means something, uniting something. Now, Vedanta says, wait a minute, actually, things are already united. In fact, they were never separated. If we think that things were separated, we put this under the classification of ignorance. Knowledge, therefore, is equivalent to freedom. Knowledge says we have no misunderstanding about our own freedom or the freedom of others or the ultimate unity behind everything. And we may even think that everything is moving toward it. So what on top of it? What is the surface that is covering this thing called knowledge? Well, it is this ignorance. When we use the word ignorance, we certainly think that it is somebody who's uneducated. That's not what we mean. In fact, education can be an obstacle to discovering this freedom and therefore uncovering this ignorance, removing this ignorance. By knowledge, we simply mean the light that dispels the darkness. And the light is an inward light, always. So we have to reach it inwardly. And because all our vision and sensations are to do with the outside, we have to use a little bit of imagination, philosophically based, that is scripturally based. So that if we want to remove our own misery and the misery of others, the first thing we have to understand is that deep down is an enduring thing, and all our misery comes from the things that change. Distinguishing the things that change from this changeless is called viveka, discernment. And so in order to practice any form of yoga, we require a level of discernment. We have to think that this world will bring us, normally in terms of activity, all activities will bind us, and these activities will bring us joy and sorrow, because all activities are a combination of good and evil. Whatever we do. Swami Vivekananda, in this same chapter, Secret of Work, will tell us, says, we read in the Bhagavad Gita again and again that we must all work incessantly. All work is by nature composed of good and evil. We cannot do any work which will not do some good somewhere, and there cannot be any work which will not cause some harm somewhere. Every work must necessarily be a mixture of good and evil, he says it again. Yet we are commanded to work incessantly. Good and evil will both have their results, will produce their karma. Earlier on, he will define what is karma. It comes from the root kra, that is to do, to act. And understand it correctly, every action really that is consciously done will require a thought about it first. A thought arises in the mind and says, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Tomorrow I'll do this, today I'll do that. One thing that goes with it is to understand that this kind of action has these two components, good and evil, and the results will be there. But they'll all produce pain. It doesn't solve the difficulty of a painful existence. Different types of pain are there. Physical pain is there. The effect of a negative thought or a bad activity, that is an activity driven toward ignorance, will produce its harmful effect in the immediate environment. The most immediate environment is your own body. And by extension, there's an environment like a bubble around you, friends, associates, and so on. Eventually, you'll see something like what has been called the butterfly effect. Some ripple happens somewhere and affects the whole thing because we're dealing with a finite universe. It has an end to it. So, understanding this And doing good, Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. In one place, Swami Vivekananda asks, why should we? There's no explanation for it. Why should we not do the greatest harm if it gives us the best benefit? The answer to this is that you cannot affect one thing without affecting the whole. We have to understand this whole universe as a holistic universe, devoid of individuals. As soon as we put individual people, names, forms, even activities, even when we put all of these in there, then we have made a mistake. We haven't been able to see the entire whole. And so we have to revise our view of the world. We have to engage in what we call revaluation. So discernment or viveka is also another way of saying revaluing what is in front. Instead of seeing something that will either, or someone who will either be for us or against us, or some circumstance that will be either for us or against us, we have to learn to have a penetrating vision and get to that thing which is enabling movement, karma, in the first place. And there's only one thing which is there. This thing is called by various names, but it is within. Some call it the kingdom of heaven within. Jesus calls it the Father. St. Paul of Christianity calls it the Christ. In philosophy, in the Vedanta, we call it Atman. In yoga philosophy, we call it Purusha. Some entity that is within me and within you and with everybody that is accessed directly in meditation. When we sit, that's what we're accessing. And then when we're no longer meditating with eyes closed, we have to understand it and see it as many, many different kinds of movements. These movements are really adapters. So the technical term for this is upadhi. Upadhi, a limiting adjunct. What is a head? It's a limiting adjunct. But it's also, of course, a glorifying, expressive adapter. This expressive adapter, an example, yes, light bulb. Light bulb is restricting the electrical current at that point, but it's manifesting light. It's an adapter. Now the whole of scripture is about listing these adapters. The sun is an adapter, the moon is an adapter, the air is an adapter, light is an adapter, the human body is an adapter, the human mind is an adapter. These are instrumental adapters. Everywhere we look, whenever we see an individuality, this we should register as an adapter. Now, what has this got to do with Karma Yoga? With this revalued approach, then action will then be more concerned with looking at these adapters and doing the necessary action without the burden of anxiety that is all the time coming from the future. I worry about this, I worry about that. I worry about this activity, what if? What if that happens? What if this happens? Doubt and fear accompany this lack of understanding of this unity of existence. So we correct it in a number of different ways. You're quite right. Karma Yoga is selfless action. Then that means that we ourselves have no permanent self. And it's not just helping, therefore, it is actually doing things away with all the time with no sense of self. In other words, it's not that I am doing this, nor is it that I am receiving this. we have to transcend, as I call it, the prophet-actor complex. I'm not the one who's doing it, and I'm not the one who's getting any benefit from it. That means all the activities are done like any other person does these activities. The activities carry on normally, but an added richness is there. The richness, the benefit of doing karma yoga, of doing all actions in a selfless way, will be all my stress gets removed. And the only way that can happen is if I orientate the time unit for every activity as the present moment, this moment only, and then the next moment. There's a book called The Power of Now by a famous author now, Eckhart Tolle. I have different ideas maybe about him as a person, but certainly what he's teaching is from Ramana Maharshi, from Buddhism and so on. And his whole teaching in terms of the power of now would be not only does this present moment give you calmness and peace, but it also empowers you, gives you power. So power means you can control every single second, every part of your time. And so the solution, says Swami Vivekananda, about this is reached in the Bhagavad Gita itself in regard to this bondage-producing nature of work, is that if we do not attach ourselves to the work we do, it will not have any binding effect on our soul. Simple. So all our difficulties, all our actions, unless they are done without any selfishness or self-interest, if they are not done from an egocentric position, then all these actions will free us. But any action that is done with a motive, any action that is done with a future orientation, any action that has a me and a my in it, any action that has this first person singular in it, will be binding. And our goal is freedom. And just to remind you, our goal is not heaven and not a post-mortem position, because that would not be a karma yoga position. It involves future orientation and a reward. But we're doing action simply for the sake of acting, for the sake of expressing the divine within us, the divine energy within us. And the only way we can do that is to do every action with absolute concentration in this current present moment. We hear all over the place about mindfulness. Mindfulness has become a very popular topic today. I'm not sure if many people understand what it really means. So let us take some typical activities that we all do. It seems we all walk. We put one foot in front of the other. It seems that we all go to some place where some purposeful work suitable for us occurs. It seems to us, it seems to me anyway, that there are activities we do to do with hygiene. We bathe. And to do with sustenance of the physical, we eat. Physical and mental, it sustains. It seems to me that all of us have movements in our internal instrument, otherwise called mind, these are activities. So activities can be of the physical kind. Activities can be of the instinctual kind, where we're not conscious of these activities, such as digesting food. Activities can be done, can be observed as mental activities, physical activities. And this, we can be conscious of all of these things. In fact, theoretically, we can be conscious of every single movement, if we direct our concentration to the physical, we could be aware of every physical thing if we trained ourselves for it. Swami Vivekananda points this out in his Raja Yoga to do with self-control. Then the next thing is we have to see when we do our physical activities, mental activities, all our activities, including spiritual activities. Again, any spiritual activity such as, I'm distinguishing spiritual activity as a formal thing, but we also have to bear in mind that there is no division between all these secular activities and spiritual activities, just classified for convenience sake only. Because all activities done as karma yoga will be spiritual activities to do with the freedom of the spirit. And that should give us peace, it should give us joy when we reduce everything down to this present moment and engage in a feeling of appreciation, an attunement with that which doesn't move. There are moments in the day where we can sit or where we can stop and align ourselves, tune ourselves to this inner core of our own being, where everything is still, like a grand, deep stillness. Be still and know that you are God. That. Then, what will be our reactions? When something comes into our area and immediately produces a reaction, that is also an activity. How we deal with it is also an activity. And when we deal with it in a selfless way, with no idea of I or me or mine, no egocentric position, no prophet-actor complex. Now we can also add a sweetness to this. Not just doing activity with a certain mindfulness in this current moment, an awareness of simply doing it, the activity itself, without any idea of how it will turn out. Leave that to something else. Leave that to another moment. We'll see how we do it. But also, love of God gets introduced into this as well, whereby we can actually do all activities, not only understanding the divine grace is flowing through us as energy to do the work, as the current. Let's go back to the example of the electrical current arriving at the light bulb. You see, tuning into the electrical current, we have much more than the light. We have everything that is expressed by the electricity in the electromagnetic field. In fact, if we have access to the electromagnetic field, we have much more than just electricity also. So it's a question of continuously tuning our attention in, and when we add devotion to it, we can accompany constantly all our activities with this repetition of a mantra, doing japa, repetition of a divine name, representing the divine presence. Now, if you really want a book on practical karma yoga, apart from the Bhagavad Gita, which is highly practical, there is this Brother Lawrence, Practicing the Presence, Practicing the Divine Presence, Practicing the Presence of God, doing all activities with a sense that the divine loving being is there with you, around you, working with you as a co-helper or a co-worker. That's a wonderful thing, because Brother Lawrence, one thing he says, that he expected great hardship in his monastery that he joined. He expected to be punished for all his difficulties that he had had in life. In other words, for his karma. What did he find? My only complaint, he says, was I just had absolute joy. I never had any moment of distress. So that makes sense. When we tune in to that which is constant and full of bliss, every moment, all the time, then the next moment fill it, the next moment fill it. And when something else diverts our mind so that it gives us stress, we stop it nicely and reintroduce this stability. Now, the question that was answered was, are there any examples from Holy Mother? If you study Holy Mother's childhood, you'll see, firstly, that from a very young age she was constantly working. Her hands were hands that helped pick the rice. Her little hands were there distributing food. Her little hands were there, all in work. Now we suspect that because she was the Divine Mother, those who believe in that will know that every activity she was doing was a form of karma yoga. And her life in the place where she was born at Jerambati was really one long round of unceasing activity. She herself had to do almost everything: cooking, serving the devotees who flocked to her, initiating them, giving them spiritual instructions. This is the highest form of karma yoga, and offering consolations to the souls weighed down with grief. And through this life of tireless service, she set an ideal of the value of work before everyone, before householders as well as monks. She says, always keep yourself busy. It keeps you in good condition, physical as well as mental. So one of her greatest legacies to posterity really is this ideal of service. Commune with Brahman, that is the highest ideal, this center of poise and stability on the one hand, and in unflagging activity on the other. So both service and worship were to her of equal value and of equal importance. And all her visitors were spiritual aspirants. But not only that, we can see that Girish, for example, discovered one night that the bed sheets given to him, Girish Chandra Ghosh, great devotee, and he was embarrassed to know that the very sheets on the bed that he was sleeping on had been washed earlier by Sharda Devi, the Divine Mother of the universe, if you take it like that. This great saintly woman, this poor Brahmin widow who had to look after all her family. But anybody who went there, she herself did all the cooking, all the cleaning and so on. And a poor devotee had only a dry fruit, if you like, to offer to the mother as a birthday present, while others had brought for her a variety of costly and dainty items, and the mother instructed her assistant to give a tiny bit of it and preserve the remainder as a token of her recognition of the giver's love and reverence. In all her activities, in other words, there was an overflowing abundance of love. Love for the activity, love for the expression of the divine grace coming out as energy, and love for all those who were the recipients of her activities. The amount of work she did not only extended to devotees and what have you, but also to her family. She had to look after an extended family, many of whom were a little abusive, awkward, argumentative, not kind, and so on. And she had to deal with all of that. How did she maintain her spiritual poise with doing this? She gives us a secret: japa. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times you should repeat your mantra doing japa. So the mother's daily life was of unparalleled charm and beauty, and she would always keep herself fully occupied with something or other, never indulging in laziness or idle gossip. Laziness and idle gossip. Idle gossip is one of the worst sins that you could have. And it is idle. There's people talking with the seeming internal satisfaction of hearing about this and hearing about that. Ever since her Dakshinaswar days, she had fallen into the habit of leaving her bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, a practice which she maintained even during illness. Immediately on getting up, she would first gaze at the portrait of the master and make her obeisance to all the different deities. And then, after completing every act connected with her personal cleanliness, she would wake up the master and start telling her beads. Now you may ask, a realized woman, a liberated woman, why should she be telling her beads? Why should she be doing japa? Why should she be doing any worship? And I quote an example where at Nilamba Babu's house, which is a place where she stayed and other people stayed. In fact, all the monks stayed at one point or other. It was an original monastery in the Belur area before the establishment of what is now the center. And there's an open kind of veranda, a roof. And there she did a tremendous tapasya, 5 fires being lit, well, 4 in each one of the 4 directions, and the sun overhead, the blazing sun overhead. She did it until her skin actually went black. When somebody asked, why are you doing this? Terrible, terrible discipline. You have no need for it. She said, I'm doing it for all the devotees, all those who cannot or who don't wish to. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So we can see that from the moment she wakes up, she is busy. When the day dawned, she would personally make all arrangements for the daily puja, which would begin at about 8 o'clock. And after performing the worship, she would arrange the consecrated food in small portions and numerous leaves for distribution among the monastic and lay devotees. And the rest of her time was taken up with devotees who flocked to her, initiating them, giving them spiritual instructions, offering consolation to souls weighed down with grief. We also have to remember that while the master was alive, she was doing all the cooking. She was feeding the master. She was receiving guests. She was looking after others. So this is an example of how she was doing it, but always very happy, not a moment of unhappiness. On one occasion, the mother was on her way from Kolkata to Cherampati, and after a couple of days' rest, the party resumed its journey in 6 bullock carts. It had been arranged that the midday meal was to be prepared at the rest house at Jaipur, which stood at a distance of 8 miles, and the party halted there for this purpose. Now she had cooked rice, and that rice she was going to offer to the master. Now, what does that mean? Is this karma yoga again? You know, when we say the prayer before a meal, what are we saying? We're offering the food. A kind of karma yoga with the hand that offers the food into the fire of digestion. And so even cooking, even eating, every activity is an action. And when it's done, as you say, selflessly, it is actually karma yoga. When we read and study the mother's life, her life was one round of sacred activities, always keeping busy. It's not the kind of life that we think, oh, a holy woman like this, all her time is meditating. She's sitting in an isolated hut and she's just meditating. And now and then she's giving a mantra to some devotees. Not at all. Her nature was one of constant activities, but her mind was always attached to the Lord. That really is karma yoga. It is, if you know the story of Dhruva and how Dhruva has become the pole star, when we keep our mind like that, constantly on the pole star, and in the midst of that do our activities, then we have done what is karma yoga. And there's, of course, the story of the yogi. I think I must have told you some time ago. The yogi who got tremendous power from his meditations. And then, of course, he went and begging food. And he discovered, just to cut a long story short, a housewife and also a person who people shunned socially, a butcher, and more realized than him, purely because they were doing their duty, what was in front of them, in other words. With this pristine attitude of service to others and a complete abnegation, self-abnegation. Now let us look at some logic about this. We are not using our own individual energy. I know we put food in the mouth and that generates energy, gets transformed miraculously into energy. That whole process is continuously going on, so that what we call the body is the food that we eat. And we have to do this. This is our obligatory action. And so I know that we do all these activities and we are obliged to do them and we have to do them. But when we do them in such a way that we are always keep our attention tuned in to the constant presence of the divine, now that has to be felt. It's not just an abstraction. And feeling it starts off with a morning meditation. We feel it because we feel that it is not our energy being used. It is not really from the food. When we analyze where the food came from, where the capacity to transform and digest it, it is an absolute miracle and an absolute wonder. So to ever think that we have anything that belongs to us is a falsehood. And that is why in the Bhagavad Gita it says we only have the right to work. There's no other right we have. We have the right, in other words, to use what is supplied as divine energy and use it in the best possible way we can. And if we are focused on this present moment, this unit of time called now, you'll find all the concentration in this now makes us efficient. Not only that, but gives us equilibrium of mind. Second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita defines yoga in this way, that it is equilibrium of mind and it is this concentration, this efficiency. So doing all activities with great concentration, with great efficiency, knowing that we are expressing this free gift called energy. And not only that, but when we see this energy poured in through, we may say all hands, all heads, all arms, all limbs. And then when we look at any object, all these objects, when we look at any creature, all creatures, when we look at a face, we are looking upon the face of the divine. Naturally, we would want to offer some selfless service to this. And this is what we learn from the Holy Mother. I could say more, but because I said that we would be short today, we'll leave it there. Okay, I think I have given you enough material for you to chew on, so we'll leave it at that. All right. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Swamiji.